Welcome to the Identity Work Podcast. If you are a high achiever struggling to find purpose in work, then join us as we discover how to create more meaning in work and life. Welcome to this week's episode of the Identity Work Podcast. We are excited to have a guest with us today, Matt Higbie. He is both a super fan of the podcast, which is exciting to have a super fan on. That's like not Adam's mom. No, the second next to your mom. And he's also a high achiever who has a fascinating career journey on his own as he's navigated the world of what I call high finance or finance and family. He's, been a foster parent. And Matt, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
I appreciate you guys having me on. This is a real treat.
Before we go into what you do, tell us a little bit about who you are. How do your friends describe Matt?
Yeah, I think what I have heard from friends and what I hope to continue to hear is that I am seen as an encourager and someone who people enjoy being around. And the thing I've heard a lot, which I just, deeply appreciate and also strive for, is people feel like when I'm with them, I care about them, which is true. I do. And I'm, like I said, really grateful that that comes across. But someone who enjoys being with people, tries to encourage others, and try to have a good time and make the most of any situation.
Awesome. I love that. And now we're going to talk a little bit about why you're a super fan, what you've learned. Then we'll go into your career journey, talk about what high finance means. We've added a new section called Trend Spotter. So, but first, Matt, how did you come across this podcast? I was shocked when I had lunch with your brother and he talked about you being a super fan. So tell us how you
Yeah,
found out about it.
yeah. It goes back to 2018, Stephen, when I was first introduced to you by my brother Chris. Shout out to Chris, who you guys both know from living in Dallas and going to the same church. But the invite, or the initial time I met you, Stephen, was an Ambassadors Club meeting, which just was incredibly timely and formative for me at that point in my career as far as shaping my view on generosity. And so that made a big impact on me. And just, at that point, anything you had to say, I was willing to listen. And fast forward the tape a few years, I think you had posted something on LinkedIn about Adam starting the newsletter. And of course, I said, oh, if Stephen likes it, I'm in. And dove headfirst into subscribing to Adam's newsletter and going all in on what he had to say, which I think led a few months later to the podcast. And just, was a real godsend for me in the sense that you guys both started this, as far as the newsletter and the podcast, at a time where I was in a period of transition in my career and thinking through what work is, what I want it to be, what it has been. And so, I'm truly grateful for what you guys are doing and the questions that you're asking and the things and the wisdom that you're sharing, because it has really meant a lot to me personally. So, shout out to Chris for the intro, and then your LinkedIn post, Adam, Stephen, which connected me to the newsletter
cool.
and then eventually the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And
That's so good.
What's one thing that's kept you coming back, or one thing that you've kind of learned or has kind of stuck out from some of these conversations in the newsletters?
I think the biggest thing has been just the idea that I'm not alone, because I think one of the lies we can be tricked into believing in all areas of life, but for sure around work and just anything that we struggle with is like, oh man, like I must be the only one who's wrestling with this or struggling with this, or like, why am I having a problem like this? And so just so much of what you guys have done is just lay out questions that you've been asking and trying to find answers to. And it's been a lot of the questions I've been asking and wondering for years as well. And so honestly, just the relatability of the struggles you guys have shared has been the biggest impact to me. And then just driving home the point that ultimately our identity is not found in our work as Christians, it's found in God. And that's the only identity that we have that is sustainable and that never changes. And so that just the reminder of that has been just incredibly helpful for me over the past, year and a half. I've been reading and listening to what you guys have been saying.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
If I could take a moment, Matt, to reverse encourage you, and also Stephen, My relationship with Steven started in the exact same way, and I've also followed him for the last 7 years, listening to everything that he said, and I'm grateful that he spends a lot of time with me on this podcast, speaking wisdom into my rambling, like, philosophical thoughts. And yeah, I started this newsletter and started writing it, and on it, that has been my biggest takeaway too from the experience of writing, has been like, wow, there are so many people that are feeling the exact same pains. Um, and you were the first person that emailed me that I didn't know. And it was this moment of like, holy cow, like someone that I didn't know is being impacted by this like piece of work that I'm doing,
I
that I'm
love
spending
that.
a lot of time. And it was, I mean, I can't tell you how encouraging it was to me to receive what I think was like a 3-paragraph detailed thoughts about a conversation you had had with your wife, and like some question you're wrestling with, from someone I'd never met before, was like truly so encouraging early in the journey, and um, helpful for me to like have the energy to continue doing it. So yeah, I'm
Man,
grateful
I
for
love
your
to hear
email,
that.
and really happy to have you here.
I love to hear that. And I was digging through the archives, Adam, because I remember some of those early newsletters really hitting home in a powerful way. And the one that you wrote, well, there were two last summer. One was about how Josh Allen took a big pay cut to stay with the team, and you just harped on how meaning is not ultimately found in money, because if it was, then the people that make the most money would have the most meaning, which I think we can all agree is not the case. And we've even experienced that in a small way ourselves with different jobs that we've had. But that was pivotal for me when I was thinking about, you know what, the hedge funds have been a great run. It's been a fun ride, but I'm thinking about doing something different, which would come with a pay cut. And so reading through your email and your thoughts on the Josh Allen situation was like, yeah, okay, I'm not crazy for thinking there could be something better out there, even if it does come with a significant reduction in compensation. So yeah, so much of what you guys have said has been so timely. And then I think, Adam, you even wrote one in January of this year about the first day jitters, and it was literally like the first day I started at Birchwood. So so much has just been like divinely ordained as far as the timing and how it's been meaningful and helpful to me. So this is a real treat.
Love that. And I want to unpack your career journey, but I also think it might be good to get not to the end end first, but like, where were you? Like you said, this content had started really resonating with you at a certain time in life. Can you talk with us about that journey and kind of where you were, and like kind of everything you learned,
Yeah,
and kind of, yeah, could you kind of walk us through what you were processing as, you started reading some of this stuff?
gladly. Rewinding the tape to early 2024, I had been working as a hedge fund analyst for 3 different funds, but did the same job, which was picking bank stocks in a long short context. So, okay, picking winners and losers from a list of 40 bank stocks, and just constantly refreshing that, and battling the woes of investing in public markets and all that comes with that. The thing that ultimately, I mean, there's a lot of things, but what I was dealing with at the time I came across the newsletter and the podcast was, man, this job requires a lot, and I don't know if it's worth it in the sense of the hours and the stress. And are there other jobs out there? What do other jobs come with? Because it's easy to look at. And at the time, I used to joke with some of my friends in Dallas about, oh man, if I could just be like a baggage guy at Southwest, like that would be it. Because those guys move the bags and then they go home and they don't stress about what's happening with the bags because they're done for the day, and they go to sleep and they're not stressed about it. So like I'd look at snapshots like that, idealize snapshots of other jobs, and just be like, oh man, like that would be it, or that would be it. And so just had reached the point of, you know what, I feel like I was in the sunset of my hedge fund career, but also thinking through what was next. What are the trade-offs involved with taking another job? What would be the decisions around that, like the decision trees, and trying to optimize on different fronts. And so just really reaching a point of like, okay, this is not the job I want to do, but I don't know what I do want to do. How should I think about what I do want to do? um, Along sort of many different angles. But that was kind of where I was mentally when I came across you guys' stuff early to mid last year.
So
What,
how
what
were
were
you
what were
thinking
those
about,
decision trees?
yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
how
Tell
were
me
you thinking about
how
what
did
you
you
want to
come to
do?
the decision?
Yeah, I think ours was a big one, especially with our first child, Holland, having been born in the end of 22. So she was coming up on a year and a half. And just how much time I wanted to spend with her. versus how much time was required to be a successful hedge fund analyst and potentially eventually portfolio manager, which I feel like is solidly 60 plus. It's just really hard to have sustained success if you're going to work less than that. And so that's just a direct trade-off of like time at the desk looking at Bloomberg and updating my models versus time spent playing with Legos and walking around the neighborhood and fishing in the lake with our daughter. So like time was a big one, but
And the time you said 60, so 60 plus hours per week at the hedge fund. So
that's right.
12-ish hours, 8 to 8, 9 to 9, kind of.
Maybe a little less Monday to Friday, but then 3 to 5 on Sunday. But yeah, directionally, that's pretty much right. So like scrambling to finish dinner, maybe helping with bedtime, but then doing another hour or two of work after bedtime. And just the day-to-day grind of the schedule is a lot. And hours was one, and then stress was another one, just because public markets are fickle. And even the best investors that have great track records are only right on their stock calls like 55 or 60% of the time. So there's just a lot of, it's almost like being a hitter in baseball where your batting average is 300. You fail 7 out of 10 times, but you're still doing really good. It's like having the strength and perseverance to understand and remind yourself that, okay, failure is necessary and unavoidable, and yet not beating yourself up and feeling like an idiot when your ideas are wrong and stuff goes against you. Because again, that's going to happen all the time. But just like the mental beating that comes with being wrong all the time, and just, I think what I've struggled with for a long time is performance anxiety in terms of identifying or trying to identify myself as a high performer, which is tricky in a job like that where your performance is quantifiable on a daily basis. And so that really fed into a lot of my issues of like, I don't want to put my identity or my value in my work. But like I would struggle with when people ask me, hey, how's work going? It's like, well, I can say good. I can say the amount of money I made that day. I can say what our year-to-date return is. I can say, and the truth is like most people didn't care about any of that. They were just want to know how I was doing. But that just tells you kind of where my head was at. Like, man, like I'm really struggling with how I try and do well at this, but not wrap myself up in the performance, which is also directly tied to compensation and lots of other things. So it was the hours, it was the stress, it was the performance anxiety. And I think also just another gifting, like I talked about earlier, of being that I feel like I have of being an encourager and just being a people person, enjoying talking and getting to know people. That matters almost none in a job like that because I'm getting paid to put up performance, not to be friends with anyone or say nice things. Now, teamwork is important and I have to build good relationships with the management teams of the companies we're investing in to optimize performance. But there's just a very little emphasis placed on people skills. And I felt like that was suboptimal, which I think you guys helped me uncover of like finding things that are inherently meaningful and that I enjoy. And there's a lot of things like that, i.e. talking to people that I wasn't really doing. And so across those different fronts, I felt like, you know what, this has been a great run and there's been a lot to like about it, but I am out of gas.
How did you decide what was next? Like, so you kind of now you're in this point of like no more hedge funds, right? Like we're going to close the door on hedge funds. Now we've got infinity other options that are out there. How do you like how'd you narrow down the decision
my wife's at
option set to
Southwest
find what you want to find?
By the way, I can help connect you to the
there we go.
Southwest.
They have a big presence in Atlanta. I haven't ruled that out. No, but I mean, I definitely in hindsight spent way too much time just like scrolling postings on LinkedIn and being like, oh, that's interesting, or that's interesting, or that's interesting. Not that none of those led to conversations, because some of them actually did. And one of them led to a job I tried to take when I left Citadel in early 2022. That was a less productive way of figuring out what to do. I think the more helpful thing was talking to people that did things I thought I might enjoy more and that might have things like better hours, which was draining me in the hedge fund role, or have more importance and emphasis on people skills and relationship building. And so just networking, which I hate using that term because I feel like it's like a business school word, but talking to people who I knew and who they knew that were willing to let me ask questions and ask them about their job and what they liked and didn't like, while still staying within, I think, something financial or analytical, because I do feel like I get a buzz around just like digging into stuff and finding ideas and helping people solve problems and just analyzing situations. So something analytical, but with better hours and more people interactions. And that process of talking to people, researching, looking on LinkedIn led me to something in wealth management, which is where I've ended up. And there's a lot of different things in wealth management, but ultimately found Birchwood through an uncle of mine, Uncle Mike, who lives in San Diego, who had been a mentor to me a few times over the years where I really felt drained, especially in some of the woes of foster care, where I was just needing someone to speak into me and pray over me. And so Uncle Mike ended up introducing me to Stephen, who I now work with at Birchwood. And initially, when I spoke with Stephen, it was just one of those networking calls of like, hey, talk to me about what you do. Like, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? How's it gone? What have you learned? What would you do differently? And so it was initially just like an informational call, which Stephen was very generous with his time to answer my questions. And then later last fall, a few months after that initial call, I reached back out to him because I saw a job posting for a firm in San Diego that was fully remote. And I said, hey, if you know anybody at this place, I'd appreciate any intros, but no worries if you don't. And he said, actually, I'm getting to the point of needing to hire someone. So if you're interested, we should talk about it. And then that led to a follow-up conversation and an in-person meeting when I was out there in San Diego for Thanksgiving, because my parents now live out there. So we were visiting my folks for the holidays. I met with Stephen, and by God's grace, he agreed to hire me and has put up with me for the first 8.5 months. But yeah, that's how I found Stephen and Birchwood, and so far so good. I'm really.
And fun fact, I grew up with Steven Nelson in Oregon. So like you're in Atlanta, I'm in Dallas, they're in San Diego, and somehow Steven Nelson and I grew up in Oregon together. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because I meant to mention that. There was a funny moment that first week I was in San Diego because I flew out there to be in person with him that first week when I officially started my new role with him. And we're standing there, he's showing me something on his computer, and he has his Gmail inbox on one of his screens, and the first email is from you. And I was like, wait, you know Steven? And he was like, wait, you know Steven? And so we had this funny moment of like not realizing that both of us knew Steven. So yeah, very funny small world moment of like, oh man, this is so cool, of how we both know Steven.
I think the secret is everyone knows Steven.
Yeah, in hindsight, it's silly that I didn't assume he already knew Steven, because he's a cool guy who's a strong Christian that's successful in what he's doing. So it was foolish of me to think he somehow didn't know Steven, but
that's good. Matt, I want to ask a selfish question here. I would like some of your advice. You talked about like performance anxiety in the hedge fund world. Something I've been wrestling a lot with lately is this feeling of performance anxiety. And at this point, I've done 4 different jobs in like 3 fairly different contexts, and I felt fairly strong performance anxiety in all of them. My current, as I sit today, I'm on week 11 of a 12-week block of parental leave, and I felt no performance anxiety, or at least very little performance anxiety, like feeding and managing nap schedules. And I'm 1 week away from going back to work, and I can already feel this like, whoa, that voice is like back and coming back with a vengeance. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, like, has the performance anxiety gone away, reduced, stayed the same? If it's been better, what have you done to sort of make it feel better?
Yeah, it's been reduced for sure. And I think that's partly just like the practical reality of making less decisions that are like immediate feedback in a clear, quantifiable way as far as how I did with that decision. So that has helped with the performance anxiety, but I do still feel a little bit of like helping people make decisions and manage their money. It's like, okay, they're trusting me. So I'm, they're relying on me to give them advice. I need to do the best that I can to give them what I think is the proper advice. It helps a little bit in my new role, at least with something like portfolio construction and investment management, where it's like, okay, I'm just telling people what I am doing with my own money and why I think it's the right thing to do. And so like in that sense, it creates less anxiety for me than my previous roles, which was like, I'm trying to pick, this stock versus that stock, which has a very, a lot of complicated decisions around it. But it helps that I'm putting my money where my mouth is, because I don't have to second guess myself, because I've done the work to feel like it's right for me. So of course I feel like it's right for others as well. But I think it's also just been the persistent power of prayer and trying to stay grounded in what matters and what is lasting and what is eternal versus what is temporary and what will fade away sooner than we realize. Because I think the lie that I have struggled with as far as performance anxiety is like, people see me as a performer, therefore I need to perform, or else, they're gonna see me as a failure, and like I can't. The thought of that just like makes me anxious, and so just the constant effort. And this is still an ongoing battle, like I said, but just like reminding myself, like, no, people don't see me as a winner or succeeder or person who puts up X performance or does whatever. They see me as Matt, who is a person who hopefully they know cares about them and loves them and wants them to know God and all those things. And so just trying to reframe how I think about what other people think about me has helped. But it's still an ongoing battle. So I don't know if that answered your question, because I feel like that was a long-winded
No, it's really
ramble,
good.
but just
Really good.
trying to stay focused on what is eternal and not what is temporal, because I think it's easy to get caught up in things that don't last. And it's easy for me to feel like I need this to go well because this is how people see me, instead of focusing on how God sees me and how that doesn't change with whatever my trade, success rate is or performance is or anything like that.
Yeah, I think
How do
it's
you
really good.
tactically change your perspective? I mean, you talked about power of prayer, but I guess just what does that tactically look like for you?
Yeah, it is. So for example, like I said, it's less. There's been less performance anxiety because there's been like less trades and less things where I'm being evaluated on a very short time horizon. So one of the things I like about my current job is the time horizon's a lot longer, because we're planning for people's retirement, which is tens of dozens of years away. So it helps not feel stressed about days or weeks or months that go differently than I thought. So time horizon helps reduce the stress. I had something else I was going to say, Stephen. I just lost my train of thought.
All good. Means you're getting older and you're actually going through midlife crisis.
So time horizon helps.
And then just what does your
was I gonna
practice
say?
look like, or tactically, like how do you
Oh
in the
yeah.
busy
So
in the
what I was gonna
busyness
say
of
was,
everyday life, how do you like reorient
yeah.
kind of the
So
mindset?
one thing that has helped is seeing the worst case scenario, which in my situation would be, I do something wrong and a client says, okay, we're not using your services anymore. We're going to do it ourselves or use someone else. And so just the client walks away and takes their business elsewhere. It's like, okay, I think I can handle that. And as long as I'm prepared for that and able to deal with that mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, it's like, okay, if that's the worst thing that can happen, then why not just do my best and try and help people as much as I can? Because the worst thing that they're going to do is walk away and go somewhere else and maybe have a little bit less money if I didn't make a perfectly timed trade or the absolutely optimal tax planning strategy or something like that. But having the confidence to do my best, knowing that the worst thing that could happen is they go somewhere else with a slightly smaller portfolio than they otherwise would have. And I think that helped if this answers your question too, Stephen. Like in my last role, and I guess in hindsight, it's almost like I wish I got fired in the hedge fund seat earlier in my career, because I saw it at the very end where things ended with Balyasny, which was the last firm that I worked for, where I got terminated for performance reasons because my portfolio wasn't doing well, our team wasn't doing well, and that led to management deciding to make some changes. And I think early in my career, is like the thought of that happening was just like unfathomable, and I just couldn't have seen myself like rebounding from that. And then it happens, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll just go do a different job now. And so I think practically, Stephen, having seen the worst case scenario in that sense in a prior role, and now thinking about and preparing for the worst case scenario in this role, it's like, okay, that's not that bad. Because I think one of the lies that has led to my performance anxiety, like I talked about, is like, oh, it's going to be so bad. But then if you actually sit down and put pen to paper about what will actually happen if your worst fears play out, it's usually not as bad as we maybe think without fully fleshing it out.
Mm. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
such
what
a
a
helpful tactic.
powerful experience to get laid off and then see that all the people that love you still love you.
Yeah,
Like what better
100%.
way to destroy the like false identity that you'd built around being an achiever, and that being the primary thing that people like cared about you for the reason they loved you, and then see that like totally stripped away and
Oh,
see
it's
the
such a
identity
gift.
part not change.
And I had a friend at I have a friend who still works at another fund who I've known for a long time, and he called me just to check in and see how I was doing a few days after it happened, and he made a very generous comparison. But the point that he made on the call was like, and he had been fired from a fund he had worked at previously, so I think he was calling to commiserate and just tell me like it says nothing about me as a person. It's just the way things go sometimes. And on the call, he was like, "We're like NFL head coaches, man." And the example he threw out was Doug Peterson in Philadelphia. It's like wins the Super Bowl, gets fired 2 years later. It's like there's very little longevity in the sense that what you've done in the past means way less than what you're doing now and or what management thinks you can do in the immediate future. And that was, like I said, a very generous comparison of my friend to make. But to your point, Adam, did help me feel better about me not being like uniquely an idiot or a failure or having something wrong with me. It's like, no, this is just part of the job that we all sign up for when we go into it.
Well, I'm glad too. Like, I mean, I think when I was laid off, that was like the catalyst that sparked everything, right? Because I didn't realize it until the time that I was like, oh, I liked my title as part of my identity, and and starting to like, okay, now that that's stripped away, and someone asks, what do you do? Like, I don't have a great answer. Who am I without the job title? And like, it sparked a lot of this. So I do think it is cool that that happened to you, and you felt fine about it too. So I think that's
Totally.
where a little bit where we all want to be.
Yeah. And it also helped because I had a gut check um, a year or so prior. So kind of mid 2023 when as a research analyst covering the bank sector was a very crazy time because banks whose stocks I'm responsible for having an investment view on are failing and going to zero. Several of the other banks that I'm responsible for having a view on are trading like they're going to zero. So just incredible volatility, which also coincided with having a 5-month-old that wasn't sleeping and my family being at the time sleeping in a queen bed upstairs at my in-laws house before our house here in Loganville was finished being built. So it's just like not sleeping. The world is blowing up. I'm a new dad, still trying to figure things out. But I was like really stressed and anxious. And my cousin, John, called me and just to check in and see how I was doing. And I think I told him, I forget what I even said, but was clearly not doing well. And he was like, hey, like, as a Christian, like, shouldn't you be able to handle stuff like this? Or that wasn't exactly what he said, but that was the idea behind it of like, I think what he said was something like, where does your faith play into this as far as like your ability to handle stuff like this? And I was just like, man, you are totally right. And it was exactly what I needed to hear because I had gotten way off track with what I was thinking and how I was processing things. And I don't know what just sent me on that tangent, Stephen, but that was a helpful gut check that I think prepared me for the firing that was to come a year later of like, oh yeah, I do need to check myself and think about what I'm focusing on and how I see myself and things like that.
Love it. The transitions are always the hardest part of podcasting, by the way.
Believe it.
It's good. Okay, so now tell us about your family life. So you have one kid, and are you still foster parent?
We have 2 kids. Our son, so our daughter Holland is almost 3. She'll be 3 in November.
Yeah.
And our son Jamin is 5 months and 2 days. He was born April 7th. So we have 2 biological kids. We are not currently fostering because you have to get relicensed when you move across state lines. So we plan to get into it, and I actually have an info session coming up for a local foster care agency to try and get the wheels turning for getting licensed again. But we're currently not in the foster care game. But yeah, 2 kids and lots of nieces and nephews around, which was part of the reason we moved to Georgia a couple years ago, which has been super, super fun.
And so when you're telling kiddos, when they're asking for career advice someday, based off your journey and where you're at today, it's what are you going to tell them?
Yeah, I think it's really important to start with what is interesting and what is appealing to them based on their gifts and what they feel like they could succeed at, not because they need to succeed, but because they need to find something that naturally draws them in, at least as a starting point. Not that everyone is able to do a job that they find, supremely intriguing, but as a starting point, it's like, okay, what's interesting, what seems cool, and just the importance of curiosity and looking into things that seem interesting and talking to people and asking questions. So I guess what I would say is starting with what you're drawn to, what you feel called to, what your giftings are, and then taking the time and effort to dig into things and be curious, because I feel like I maybe could have done more of that as a younger lad, and ask questions of people that did different kinds of jobs. And so those, I guess, would be my two things: of see what you think is interesting, and then actually look into it and ask questions of people that do it, and see if it still seems interesting. And if not, then look into other stuff that could be interesting.
Good. Love it. Adam, any other questions before we move into our new section of Trend Spotter and then our always on questions to wrap things up?
I feel like I'm learning a lot from Matt. I could always ask many questions, but I think I got a lot of takeaways I maybe need to go process. So no further questions at this time, Matt. I appreciate it.
It sounds good.
What's one of your takeaways, Adam, that you're processing?
Oh man,
Putting you on the spot.
I feel like I'm really sitting with the identity conversation we had, and almost the how pain and hard moments in career can make that clearer. And I feel like from both of y'all in this conversation, almost this like gratitude for that part of the story and journey that made who you are so much clearer. So I'm really sitting, I feel like I'm really sitting with that truth, and feeling grateful for that reminder, and sort of that lens on things. If I had a question for you, something I'm sort of thinking and wrestling through is, do you regret the time in hedge funds? Like, when you reflect back on your hedge fund time, was that helpful, productive part of the story, or was that 4 years too long and you should have pulled the plug earlier? So I don't know, I'm
That's a
thinking
really
through
good question.
that for you, and how that influences the way I think about, I don't know, taking big risks, career changes, etc.
Yeah. So the short answer is I don't regret it. And I'm really grateful for what I learned during that time, both like in technical terms, as far as investing, how stocks work, what makes them move, and all sorts of things like that. But then also the people that I worked with during those years taught me a lot about life, and especially the first hedge fund boss I ever had, who has 5 kids and was very adamant from my early days as a 23-year-old analyst who was very green and trying to figure out how the world works. He really taught me a lot about the importance of family and being physically present with your kids. And so the relationships that I built and the things that I learned make it really hard for me to say I regret it or that I feel like it wasn't worth it. It would have been harder to do it for as long as I did if we had kids earlier, because, like I said, the schedule makes it harder to be a fully present and involved dad in the way that I feel like I'm called to be. So the timing of it is interesting, but no, I'm really glad I did it. I did try and get out after 2 years at Citadel, because I did 6 years at Carlson, 2 years at Citadel, and basically resigned from Citadel, having accepted another role, which was actually going to get us to move from Texas to Georgia in early 2022. But that fell through because I accepted it with the expectation that I'd be able to work in a hybrid capacity, i.e., work from home sometimes in Texas and then commute sometimes to Georgia, because we had a foster placement that we were willing to adopt if it went that way. And I guess I wrongly assumed that my would have been future employer was on board with that, which I found out they weren't. And then I had to go back to the market and think through what I wanted to do, which ultimately led me to Balyasny, which was a very important experience that also really taught me a lot, with a lot of really great people there as well. So I guess, yes, I am glad I did it. In full disclosure, I tried to get out 2 years sooner, unsuccessfully. But I'm really glad I did it for as long as I did, and especially grateful for all the people that I met and everything that they taught me, investing wise and just in general about life.
Love it. All right, Trend Spotter, you said you were excited about this one. So what trends are you noticing right now through your work? What are you paying
Yeah,
attention to?
I feel like financial planning is an interesting one because AI, like if there was a Wall Street Journal article a week or two ago about like certain types of jobs that are very vulnerable to AI, replacing people, and financial planning was definitely one of them because you can go on to ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever platform you use and ask a very technical question of like, what is the maximum contribution to my Roth IRA this year? Or questions like that. And they'll give you a, answer straight from the IRS website. But something Sam Altman said that I thought was really interesting was like knowing information and data like that is now commoditized because those platforms can pull it for you from anywhere. The important part is knowing the right questions to ask. And Roth IRA contributions is a really straightforward, simple example. But within financial planning, there's obviously lots of other things that go on besides just that decision. And a lot of people don't know what questions they should be asking. And so a long-winded answer to your question, Stephen, is a trend that I feel like I'm noticing is even more importance being placed on and value being found in personal relationships and having a real person who you can talk to about something as personal and meaningful as your finances and your investments and how you're thinking about those things and budgeting and retirement and everything that we help families with day in and day out. But and I'm hopeful it continues and that I don't get replaced by AI. But at least so far, it seems like people are finding even more value in having one single person who they know and trust and can talk to about what they're dealing with. Because the trend that I've seen, obviously everyone's seen, is AI is prevalent and you can get answers to anything all the time. So it just feels like it's even amplified more of this dynamic of like noise, more places to find information, which I think just makes decisions feel even more overwhelming in the sense that we now feel empowered to make the perfect decision on everything we do all the time. And our role a lot of times is to help people think through things and put things in perspective. And so I feel like even more value being found in and placed on personal relationships with actual humans who know you, who you trust, who can help you understand what to do.
Okay.
I'd be curious what you guys think about that as far as your perspective on how AI is shaping things. I know we could spend another 30 or 40 minutes just on that topic, but that was the one trend that came to mind.
I think I buy your hot take or your trend there. I think particularly financial planning, like robo advisors and like financial independence, retire early folks saying just buy the S&P. Those wealth managers are stealing your bips, like have been around for a long time. And I think that is a different market. Like I feel pretty financially literate. I'm probably never going to hire a wealth manager because I just like feel confident asking the right question. But I think that the person that is coming to a wealth manager is doing it not because they think it's going to juice the last 1% out of their portfolio. They're coming there because they know they are their own worst enemy if they're like totally responsible for their investing. They are certainly going to cut their portfolio in half if you just like let them make gambling decisions on Tesla.
Right.
And
trading options or
you are the like handcuffs to them to make them make responsible decisions, or to just like make them feel confident that someone that knows more than them is making the decisions. And I don't think AI or robo advisors or Wealthfront or any of those folks are gonna change people's like need to feel trust and confidence in the like safekeeping of their money. So I think your job's safe for a while.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And another thing, I don't want this to be a sales pitch for me or anything like that, but another thing that crossed my mind, Adam, is like how I think about my role is helping people increase confidence and reduce like stress and anxiety and uncertainty. And I feel like that's something that's really hard to get with AI because you can get like numbers and data and analysis, but it's really hard, at least for me personally, for things I've been looking up around like house projects and things that I'm trying to figure out for the first time. AI is great at providing information, but less good at providing like confidence and reducing anxiety. So I'm hopeful that that trend continues, but that's all I got.
It's good. I'm going to be reflecting on kind of the insider of the Altman quote on puts more impetus on you asking the right questions. So I think that's important. Okay. RO was on questions. Looking at your experience of work, is meaning found or is it created?
I think the answer is both, um, which is kind of a non-answer, but I think it is helpful to find something that you're naturally drawn to, which you guys have talked and written about at length, because it's very difficult to feel like any sense of joy in doing something that you just like really don't enjoy doing. Every job has things that are required that nobody enjoys doing. So it's not like we're ever going to find a job that's always perfect. But with the found aspect being your giftings and your talents that you've been given by God, using those to try and find something that leverages at least one of those, I think is important. And therefore, I think meaning can be found in that respect. But then the second part of creating it is like, okay, we can try and create it by using it to glorify God and using it to bring other people into relationship with Him and hopefully into closer relationship with ourselves and with other people as well. So just loving people and loving God is something we can do in any type of work. And that is like a source of meaning that is applicable on any front. So I don't know that I really answered the question, but I think it's both. And it's found in the sense that we look for things that are inherently interesting and or use some of our giftings, but then it's also created because we can use any job to live out the calling that we have, which is to, the Great Commission of making disciples and leading people to faith.
And we always do a delve deck. We're not quite sponsored by them, but we will be someday. Since we're talking about the world of high finance today, this is an appropriate question that I picked out. What is the best thing you've ever splurged on?
Wow.
Gosh, that's such a good question for Matt.
Oh man.
You're gonna answer it too, Adam. We all are.
I would say our baby moon vacation.
You gonna tell us where you went?
We went to Hawaii, and I'm really glad we did, because time with Marta is hard to find with kids because kids require a lot. And I'm really glad that we went big, because that was a really important trip for us at that point in our life. And was just a super sweet time that we really enjoyed. I don't know if we'll ever go back there, because the way I did it was mental accounting of taking some of my signing bonus from my hedge fund job and just allocating it to the trip. And so I just thought about that money as never having shown up in my account and having been spent. But that was a really sweet trip that was probably the best thing we splurged on, or I have splurged on.
That's good.
Love it.
I am going to give you a best splurge I've ever had and a worst splurge I've ever had, which happened today, and I'm still a little heated about. The best splurge that I have ever had, I don't know why this one came to my mind, but I am very frugal and like miserly, and I feel like I like never spent a lot of money on like any kind of like thing technology. But when I lived in Dallas, I said, I'm gonna buy a sound bar for this TV, and I bought a sound bar, and I felt like we listened to like music on a higher volume than what an iPhone is able to produce for the first time in my life, like in my house, and just had so many fun moments of like having people over and having music as like a real adult played out louder than an iPhone volume. And I've owned a soundbar ever since then. Every place I've ever gone, I've always had a soundbar. So, a random but good splurge, high quality music in your house. The worst splurge that I've ever had is, we opened our mail today, and Christy opened a traffic violation in Atlanta. And Matt, well, curious if you've ever heard of anyone that experienced this, but a year ago, a new law was passed in Atlanta about passing a bus stop sign.
Okay.
And my wife was on a 6-lane road, 4 lanes away from this bus going the opposite direction, parked on like truly a highway, and got a $1,000 fine
man.
for driving past this bus 4 lanes away from it.
I mean, kudos to Atlanta to have the camera system to figure that out.
Yeah, on the bus. The camera strapped to the bus, pointing at it's right outside of its door. Like they made us watch the live video and everything. There's no contesting that this was a car. But man, brutal. $1,000. Like,
Yeah, that's
she didn't even
gnarly.
see
I
it.
can thankfully say I've not heard of any family or friends that have experienced that. That is just absolutely brutal.
Oh. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm still a little hot about that. The dollar value, and also just like she was 4 lanes away, going the other direction. Like there's no kids there. I don't know.
That's really tough. And
Anyways.
yeah, easily the worst splurge of probably all time.
Thank you. I needed to hear that.
Mine went towards vacation as well, Matt. Got the upgrade for the overwater bungalow on the honeymoon. Huge
Nice.
overwater bungalow guy. Just, other resorts talk about ocean view, but you can be like in the ocean within 5 seconds of anywhere in the hotel, anywhere in the room. It's awesome. Yeah.
Dang, that's sweet.
And I booked it through Costco. So it was a splurge, but it wasn't that bad.
I've heard a lot of rumblings about this Costco vacation planning services. I've never used, but I feel like I'm gonna have to check it out.
We had the St. Regis on Costco. It's like, does the St. Regis want Costco people there? But they did, and we loved it. So thank you.
Everything in the St. Regis was jumbo
Costco.
size. There's no travel, anything. It's just like you have to
55
use the
55
XL
shampoo
size
bottles in the shower. Wow.
Yep.
That is very interesting.
Thanks.
So far, we've been mooching off of my in-laws' Costco membership because they have one and they go pretty frequently. So we just send them our orders and they bring it home to us. But eventually, I think we might have to actually pay for our own membership. And if we do, we're definitely going to use the travel benefits.
You work for a hedge fund. You can afford your own Costco membership.
Someday my in-laws will kick me off.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining us today, Matt. We appreciate your vulnerability. You're very articulate. And so thanks for sharing your story. How can our listeners get in touch with you? How can we get in touch?
Yeah, birchwoodcapital.com is our website. Me and Steven are on there, and there's a form you can fill out, or my email is just matt@birchwoodcapital.com. And anybody who wants to talk about identity, work, finance, financial planning, investing, would love to chat. So yeah, any of the above, please send me an email.
All right. We will. Well, thank you, Matt. We're excited to see everybody next time on our next episode. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Really appreciate it.
This show has been brought to you by Arvo Advisory, a new category of consulting company, half management consultancy and half executive communication and PR firm. Arvo works with great leaders to craft and communicate their strategy to achieve change and create valuable companies. Find out more at arvoadvisory.com or follow us on LinkedIn. And finally, if you've been blessed at all by this podcast, please remember to rate and review the show or share it with a friend. And with that, go forth and know that you are loved because of who you are and not because of what you do for work. See you next time.